Ok. am, por tiempo ya no puedo continuar con las pruebas técnicas. Lo único que les puedo pedir es que hablen fuerte y claro para que los intérpretes los escuchen bien. En este momento les pido que ya encienden sus cámaras y cuando les toque hablar, prenden el micrófono y cuando ya terminen, apagan el micrófono. Así que les vaya muy bien. Cualquier cosa, yo estoy acá en el chat de Zoom. Que les vaya muy bien. Pablo,
Muchas gracias,
to-
Vanessa. Éxito.
a ti, María. Pablo, todo tuyo.
De
Muchas
Vanessa.
gracias, Vanessa.
Ok, listo, voy a abrir el...
A temperatura ambiente, entre 20 y 30 grados, por lo que es preferible conservar la comida en refrigeración o congelación. Para asegurar el consumo de alimentos y evitar confusiones, se recomienda para la comida preparada etiquetar con fecha y consumirlos antes de 5 días. Solo cuando un alimento es inocuo puede satisfacer las necesidades nutricionales de las personas, ayudar a los adultos a mantener una vida sana y a los niños a crecer y desarrollarse. Tú puedes ayudar manteniendo tu cocina limpia y lavándote frecuentemente las manos. Eso es buena higiene. ¿Y tú, qué otras acciones realizas para mantener los alimentos preparados en buen estado? Escríbelo en los comentarios. ¿Puedes fiarte de tu nariz para saber si la comida está en buen estado? Te explico, esto es ciencia y cocina. Cuando queremos saber si un alimento está en buen estado, solemos recurrir al olfato o el gusto. Sin embargo, esto puede conducir a errores. Muchos microorganismos que pueden causar enfermedades no modifican el aspecto o el olor de la comida. Estos son especialmente difíciles de detectar en platos de cereales y legumbres. En el Día Mundial de la Inocuidad Alimentaria, la FAO recuerda que 1 de cada 10 personas en el mundo se enferma por consumir alimentos contaminados por bacterias, virus, hongos o parásitos. ¿Qué puedes hacer para evitar enfermedades transmitidas por alimentos? Es importante recordar que las bacterias que causan intoxicaciones alimentarias se multiplican más rápido a temperatura ambiente, entre 20 y 30 grados, por lo que es preferible conservar la comida en refrigeración o congelación. Para asegurar el consumo de alimentos y evitar confusiones, se recomienda para la comida preparada etiquetar con fecha y consumirlos antes de 5 días. Solo cuando un alimento es inocuo puede satisfacer las necesidades nutricionales de las personas, ayudar a los adultos a mantener una vida sana y a los niños a crecer y desarrollarse. Tú puedes ayudar manteniendo tu cocina limpia y lavándote frecuentemente las manos. Eso es buena higiene. ¿Y tú, qué otras acciones realizas para mantener los alimentos preparados en buen estado? Escríbelo en los comentarios.
Write to us in your comments. To the regional webinar in the commemoration of World Food Safety Day 2025. We are pleased to have your participation in this space to exchange ideas and reflect on the importance of ensuring safe food for everyone. We'd like to remind you that we have simultaneous Spanish-English translations. Please change your language and adjust it in the icon in the lower right corner. In 2025, for the fifth consecutive year, Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, and the Regional Office for Latin America and the Caribbean, the PAHO Pan-American Center for Food and Mouth Disease and Veterinary Public, the Coordinator Committee for Latin America and Caribbean, CICELAC, chaired by Uruguay, and the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture, ICA, and the International Regional Organization for Agricultural Health, OIRSA, are joining forces to celebrate World Food Safety Day and emphasize the importance of food safety for better health. For the inauguration of this event, we will first hear the welcoming words by Mr. Máximo Torero, Chief Economist and FAO Regional Representative ad interim for Latin America and the Caribbean. Although Mr. Torero was unable to join us today, he didn't want to miss the important activity, and I've shared a video featuring his words with you.
Señor Otorino Cosivi, director del Centro Panamericano de Fiebre Aftosa y Salud Pública Veterinaria de la OPS. Señor Leonardo Vega, presidente del Comité Coordinador de la Comisión de Códex Alimentarios de FAO para la América Latina y el Caribe. Señor Raúl Antonio Roda Suazo, director ejecutivo del Organismo Internacional Regional de Sanidad Agropecuaria. Señor José Urdaz, gerente del Programa de Sanidad Agropecuaria, Inocuidad y Calidad de los Agroalimentos del Instituto Interamericano de Cooperación para la Agricultura y
for ICA, distinguished participants, it is an honor to welcome you to this regional seminar in the framework of the World Food Safety Day 2025. Every year, 600,000 people, 1 of every 10, become sick for contaminated foods, particularly in the Latin American and Caribbean, where there is more than 2,000 of these affect children in the region. The social impact is intensified when we consider the economic and commercial impacts. Food safety are inseparable, and also, of course, food security. And we have celebrating this World Food Safety Day to 2025 to concretely set forth and strengthen the connection amongst all the different players. The system requires a collective participation to ensure this food safety. It is a shared response to generate the income and also to ensure that the food is safe and is maintained in a sustainable manner. FAO is participating actively in supporting the member countries in food safety and the prevention of food insecurity. We have to ensure better health, articulating food safety with public health policies policies, environment, and commerce. This effort must go with a generation of scientific support to ensure that it is supported. Science is key. One example is the joint World Health Organization and FAO that provides recommendations for the generation of standards in the Codex Alimentarius. This is concrete in the service of inequity and safe trade. FAO proposed a antimicrobial process to ensure countries like Bolivia and Colombia have had concrete results and innovative that can be scaled and strengthen the capacity of governance in these situations. FAO with PAHO and the University of Minnesota to apply the analysis of risk in food safety. This methodology provides scientific support for decision making. Although science, biomedicine is fundamental to ensure food safety, the social and other disciplines have contributed decisively for more sustainable process that will be in the agenda and to ensure the exchange of experience. The commemoration of World Food Safety reminds us that the damage to human health can be prevented through solid policies with science, governance, and compliance with the national requirements. It is in the strategic framework of FAO that looks for better production, better nutrition, better environment, and better life with food safety for now and in the future. I wish you all a very fruitful event. It is a pleasure to be with you. We would like to thank these opening remarks. To continue, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Orsini. Good morning and good afternoon to each one of you. It is a pleasure to welcome you to this World Food Safety Day 2025. I would like to thank sincerely your participation and presence in this moment, which is so fundamental, which is dialogue and the collective commitment. I would like to thank the friends and colleagues that are here with me today in this opening, Massimo Torero, who represents FAO in Latin America and the Caribbean, Jose Ordaz, the manager of the ICA, Raúl Rodas. The food safety example is what Codex Alimentarius carries out through the rigorous scientific support, provides global support to implement fair trade fair. It is today when we must continue implement a contribution to operating in each country. We know that the capacity of a robust laboratory has a fundamental role in these systems. With this year's topic, we are working to strengthen the national capacity to detect pathogens transmitted by food and also its resistant variant to microbial aspects and other dangers. These capacities are a key to provide evidence and avoid any emerging threats. Today we celebrate the various sectors and disciplines that jointly participate through the value chain. It is only through the cooperation of science, public policies, the productive system, and the civil society can we guarantee food safety and continue towards a sustainable development. I would like you to take advantage of all the presentations that we will hear today. This opportunity is very valuable to learn and share and renew our commitment for a cause that gathers us to protect public health, promote the health of our population through safe food. Thank you very much, and let us continue jointly working with science as our ally for a better and sustained future. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, señor Otorino.
Thank you very much, Mr. Otorino Cosivi. We will now like to hear Mr. Leonardo Vega, who is the chair of the FAO, WHO Coordinating Committee for Latin America and the Caribbean. Thank you. I would like to thank all of you for being here today. Food safety is a silent effort, and we always react when it fails. From the field to the table requires a commitment. Science requires us to provide all the tools to identify the risks and establish norms based on evidence to ensure public safety. From this standpoint, CICILAC in the framework of Codex is part of this bridge in scientific advances and scientific information to inform for regional information for food safety. For Latin America and the Caribbean, CICILAC is ensuring to promote communication and to join forces with the other organizations. This webinar will allow us to strengthen this exchange and advance together. I wish you a very fruitful event. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vega. I would now like to introduce Jose Ordaz, Manager of ICA's Agricultural Health, Food Safety, Quality Program. Thank you very much, and good morning to all of you. It is a great pleasure to welcome all of you at this regional event that commemorates the World Food Safety Day 2025. This event has an enormous value because it provides us with a 5 continuous year in which major allies as FAO, OPS, PANAFTOSA, ISA, Raúl, and the CICILAC and myself from ECO, joint effort to underline something that is fundamental, which is the innocuity of food is fundamental to the sustainable development of nations. We have a very important food safety. Science in action is the motto of this year. We want to reaffirm a common objective that they are guided by scientific evidence and that our activities are there to strengthen the control of food system, to protect our population's health and generate trust in what we consume. Within this context, the magnitude of this issue, this is a very alarming information. Every year, 600 million people, that is 1 of every 10 people in the world, becomes ill given contaminated food. And this generates approximately 420,000 avoidable deaths per year, affecting the more vulnerable populations. These figures are not just statistics, they present a public health issue and a delay in development. Diseases transmitted via food impact our systems, commerce, tourism, and in food security of our nations. From the ICA and in our hemispheric program of food health and the quality of foods, we believe that the only way to progress is with a comprehensive system based on science, with an effective communication between the private, public, academic, research, and producers and government. We work at the regional level to build capacities, to share data, comprehensive information, and create a culture of food safety in the entire region. And this is what this seminar today will provide us. We will see innovative information as AI use in social scientists provide culture of safety, and also case studies on international standards. And of great importance is a roundtable that will talk about the scientific data in decision making. I would like to thank all of you for your participation. This is an effort that is shared. Food safety begins with each one of us, but we will only achieve a lasting impact if we work together based on science. Thank you very much, and I wish you a wealth of an event. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, señor Ordaz. Para cerrar nuestra bienvenida,
Mr. Ordaz, thank you very much. Now, to conclude our welcome, I'd like to leave you with the Executive Director of a regional agricultural health entity, Mr. Rodrigo. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and good morning. We thank you very much for, it's great that we're here from the headquarters of OIRSA in the city of El Salvador. We're celebrating the Food Safety Day. So great. Thank you very much. And we're quite pleased because we have a strategic topic which is quite important. That's what we're talking about today. We are we have the World Food Safety Day here, and remembering us, in a couple of years ago, we talked about from the fields of the farms to the tables, the good guidelines and practices for good agricultural practices and everything that we've done in terms of food safety requirements. In those years, OIRSA it started re-looking at its way of addressing agricultural health, and it wanted to strengthen food safety in that area. From San Salvador, would like to greet Mr. Máximo Torero from FAO, our friend Torino Cosivi. Kind greetings, Eduardo Vega, our friend Adadika. Some greetings from abroad, and everyone. We would like to thank everyone engaged for having an event of such extent this morning. The topic that's gathering us today is food safety, right? A science in action is a concept which is quite challenging, right? It's bold, and it invites us to take science to the field, and the farms, to producers, to those that transform the food. It's quite a challenging topic, and it invites, extend the invitation to each one of the international cooperation bodies and entities and all the organizations that are related with food safety. Drives us to assume that challenge, to undertake that challenge, that science exits from laboratories, from universities, from pedagogical classrooms, and to truly reach where it's useful, right? And at the field, farms, companies that transform food, right? It's an enormous challenge that we have for today, and it will always call for us, right? Science in action and food safety. Food safety, food security is something that, and I'd like to mention again, to add to what my peer said before, it's a shared responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility, ensuring that the food that we produce is processed, and guaranteeing that this is traded. But the food traded does not produce any type of disease to the consumers. And OIRSA is fully knows about this responsibility. I'd like to especially greet this morning Mr. Raúl Peralta, who is our leader in ORILTA, just like Mr. Marroquin, in terms of food security, food safety. It's a great commitment at a level of 9 countries, and we've assumed this for many years with the responsibility and so much enthusiasm to drive and encourage food safety in our different producers throughout the countries that are members of OIRS. Now, from our headquarters, we'd like to talk about our commitment to continue working, unavoidable commitment to work in order to guarantee food safety for all of our populations to consume safe food, right? Kind greetings from OIRSA, hugs, and hopefully we have a great and successful event today. Thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for your words, Mr. Rodas, and to all the institutions with whom we co-organized this event. Now, This year, we'll talk about food security, food safety, the science in action, and we want to talk about the fundamental role of science in food safety management. Now, within this framework, we've gathered different experts to know about different aspects of this contribution, like the use of new technologies and the development of capacities, the role of social sciences in strengthening the management of food safety, and the value of data that's generated by countries for the development of the international guidelines. In addition, experts from national authorities will reflect about the importance of having scientific evidence and data for decision making in food safety, and how we create evidence and how develop evidence and how that translates into concrete actions. Having said that, we will now begin with our expert presentations. Each expert will have 20 minutes, and once the three speakers speak, we'll have a space for Q&A. We encourage you to send your questions through the Q&A box in the chat box, right? We'll be gathering all of them. Now, before I begin, I'd like to invite you to please turn your cameras on so we can take a group picture for the day.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Bueno, para iniciar.
Well, to begin, yes, we hear a bit of echo.
Para iniciar con nuestras conferencias.
To begin this conference,
Arena de simulación virtual para
we'll do a virtual simulation for the inspection or surveillance of food safety using AI by the engineer Nelson Andrade, who is a computer sciences engineer. He's currently administrator of the regional infrastructure of OIRSA, where he leads technological initiatives of high impact. He's got international certifications and certifications from different headquarters, certification for management of IT services, certification for network vulnerabilities, which support his technological safety. Among his main achievements, we have the creation and implementation of a regional project of virtual and augmented reality, along with the development of an innovative system for surveillance of agricultural crops. Engineer Andrade, the floor is yours. Okay, it's a pleasure, everyone. Today we will have a lecture which will be totally different, and we'll be able to see an expectation of change in terms of virtual reality. Based on this, in the World Food Safety Day, Science in Action, virtual reality is becoming an experience that will change the concept of training, and that will make us have a perspective on how to take reality to an immersive process. Virtual reality is just a small branch or area of IT where we will extract that part of informatics and we'll take it to a peak point where we can show all your expertise and everything you have. Now, the aims of that OIRSA has, its targets, is to provide users the theoretical and practical knowledge about the use of virtual reality and immersion technologies, and likewise apply that to good practices for safety practices, right? Where we will have these interactive workshops, the field practice interactions where we'll strengthen these technical capacities. And just like we've mentioned before, other times we will learn by doing. Now, a brief history of this augmented reality and virtual reality. This initiated with Ivan Sutherland in 1960, and it's evolved with time, right? We have a time limit. And until last year, we have one of the best helmets, VR helmets, where we have found many milestones, and we've overcome different barriers we had before, cost reduction, or we've reduced the technical or vision issues we've had. And currently we have 3 types of realities that can cover different situations. Virtual reality, which is to create a virtual world which is fully immersive, isolating the user from the real world. Augmented reality, where I can mix reality, the real world, actual world. And then we have mixed reality, a third item, which is when I interact. Therefore, if I have a reality and I merge components of my reality with virtual reality, procedures become much faster and it's easier to learn. Likewise, in a virtual environment, by having all these technologies, we will create a fully innovative experience. And just like we're doing today, right, celebrating the WFSD, we can tell all of you and show evidence to all of you in an example, not only about this topic, but we can talk about global leaders who are using this technology. We have the construction field, we've got pilots, we've got pilot simulations, we've got the medical field, and also agriculture is using this technology. If this technology was already being used in other areas which are of large impact for our region and for this world, why not use it for all of our topics? Now, training a professional. VR and augmented reality will be a change of paradigm here for training. Why? Because the training experience, the learning experience is more effective, more memorable. Why? Because if I practice in virtual reality, it's as if I was actually doing things in person, but it could be that I'm not ready to go to a remote place, right? Or maybe I don't have the components or the procedures to do things, but maybe I can practice before I go to sites. Not only the technical part, but any person, any age can go ahead and do so. Now, the cost have reduced considerably, significantly. Now, VR helmets are hats are more accessible for anyone, and we have time saving. It's much more efficient. If I have a procedure that it could be maybe executed in 15 minutes with all the different steps, and to go ahead and sample around if I'm walking and sampling, or even I can actually hear the sounds of the environment where I doing the procedure. That will bring me much closer to an experience. I'll take that experience in my brain, and I'll increase my learning in a way never seen before. Now, of course, there's challenges in hardware and software due to the cost, but like I've mentioned, costs are quite lower now. Now, usability for users, and there's some users that got dizzy, but in the last versions of VR helmets, we've overcome this, right? Because these challenges, because we've got more resolution in the glasses. We'll cover all ages. And we've overcome all these challenges. Currently, the body is, or the entity is innovating on creating this type of technology, and the interactions are more natural, more intuitive controls, and we as developers were coming close to more realistic experiences, improving the grabs, the sounds, and all the haptics. Now, we'll give you an example that we have a simulation pilot. This is a prior image of what we will see. And here we have the demonstration, this before, or the test for anti-mortem and post-mortem inspection. This is for the production and slaughtering of livestock. So I'd like to thank the Ministry of Agriculture, SENASA from Costa Rica. I'd also like to thank the SENASA from Honduras with Dr. Miriam, who has helped us and assisted us in taking this reality to a simulation arena. Okay, let's continue. And now we're going to share my screen again. And this is fully live, okay? We are going to enter our simulation arena.
Bienvenido a la sala de simulación.
Welcome to our virtual simulation room with immersive technologies at IMUSA. Please select the menu like to enter in. We've got this development is thanks to OIRSA, the IDB, and the contributions of many people who have made us already have the simulation arena. And for now, we are going to show you what we're doing
con el SENASA de Honduras y el SENASA de Costa Rica y la parte de dirección
in Costa Rica, and
y no puede los elementos. Si ustedes
we've
ven,
got the elements, as you see.
tenemos un ambiente
We've got
totalmente inmersivo,
a fully immersive environment, a safe area. We've got the entire environment, and we're working, and now we will inspect the heads, right, of the livestock. It's part of the processes here. Therefore, we could have the information part, for example, upload into the platform. When you cut the head according to the procedure, we'll cut the head, chop it.
Si ven, ya la tenemos.
And we already have it in our hands. It says take the animal's head and hang it. Wash it off. Now put a bag on the animal's trachea. That's what we will do now.
Y ahora toma la cabeza y llévala a la mesa de inspección.
And then you take the head, you go to the official table for inspection.
Ya la tenemos ubicada.
We've already located it, and now our next step is go up to the platform. I can see both the steps here, or I can see them wherever I move. Okay, so I took the head, take it to do the prior, just to review characteristics of tuberculosis, etc. here in your table. I've got my cleaning devices, my knives, which will help me do this inspection.
Comenzar a verificar. El proceso
I'll start checking.
está en desarrollo. Aquí nosotros vamos
The
a
process is
poder
under development, and here we'll be able to do some verification cuts. Nevertheless, the sample that we're taking now is the use of each one of these elements and the knives and the food safety we are keeping throughout the process, because it says right here, with the orange knife, do the cleaning and withdraw the material. So I could take the orange knife, disinfect it, right? Just like you do it in the procedure at the plant on site. And I can work with each and every one of these tools for us to to learn by doing. Then it says cut the hyoid's bone to withdraw the base of the tongue, and that's one of the things that we will do.
Yo utiliza el cuchillo negro en la parte comestible para verificar si existe cistercosis o no según el
Now, once the black knife, once it's clean, use the black knife for the edible part and review.
Y comenzar a cortar y hacer la verificación.
And we can start cutting and verifying.
Revisa los cortes de herradura en los laterales.
And we've got the lateral cuts. And here we have all the processes we must do, right? In the simulation arena, you have everything, all the steps animated, right? If it's all approved, you put if the head is okay, we put the head, we hang it in line. It's signed off process. And then, if you finish a process, if you see that the environment is quite similar to what is done, and you'll see each one of the stations here, and I can practice all my steps here to have the proper food safety process for post-mortem and livestock. This is part of the simulation we're showing you, and we want to show you how we're working, IRSA, how we're working on this procedure as OIRSA. And this is it for me in terms of presentation, and I'm concluding. I would like to invite
you for everyone to have closer experiences to what's going on and the procedures that are taking place with the technicians, with different people, so that food safety continues to be innovation. With this kind of information, the organization is also working to ensure creating some video games to provide information about simulations, to ensure that people have a better experience inside a simulation arena or within reality, virtual reality also, which is what we're working on at OIRSA. Thank you very much. Our following presenter is Mr. Manuel Miranda. He's a veterinarian of the Chilean University. He works in the Chilean Agency for Quality and Food Safety, with a coordinator with the systems of production and research and development, in charge of helping the productive system, particularly small-scale companies and consumers, in risk management in food safety, in the production chains safety, and food areas. Manuel will talk to us about social sciences in food safety, the Chilean experience in the culture of food safety. Manuel, thank you very much for being with us. And I will let you know when there are 5 minutes to go before your presentation has turned. Thank you very much. Thank you to the organizers for this invitation. I will share my screen to refer to my presentation.
¿Se ve bien la presentación?
Can you see the presentation? Yes. Thank you. I would like to thank again FAO, OPS, ICA, ORISA, and CICELAC to participate in social sciences. The video that I saw at the beginning, there was no social sciences. These are disciplines that are more linked to natural sciences. So I'm going to be brave and not coming from these sciences that I'm fascinated with. I'm going to talk about social sciences. Natural sciences, I am a veterinarian, although my dog doesn't believe that I'm a vet, but surely I am. And therefore, I would like to present this with a great deal of respect for the colleagues that come from another area of knowledge than mine. I will begin then with the distinction of what social sciences are. It is a joint academic discipline, and this is how it appears as definitions that exist that I was able to have access to. And these disciplines have to do with the society and the relationship amongst individuals, the human behavior, social structures, and from philosophy and sciences. Social sciences are basic sciences, like natural sciences. They respond and they're made up through the observation, which are different like sciences like logics and mathematics. And the different texts that one can read, it is made up, sometimes 10, some say different 14 different disciplines, where some of them are listed here. I will be talking about this topic. Now, the link of social sciences with food safety, I will give you a perspective from public policies and the strengthening of food safety in institutions, which is fundamental in this promotion of this webinar, and how social sciences and its discipline and distinctions and tools can help us to better understand the strengthening and management and better prevent the quality of food. We will talk about the institution in Chile and in other nations. Various referred to this at the opening remarks. Much of this institutionality has to do with a national system for food safety and food security. We have a national policy, which is a roadmap for us, and then we have a methodology to tackle food safety, as was mentioned, which is risk analysis. From social sciences standpoint, we will center ourselves first in the first one and the last one. So let's begin by saying that the National System for Food Safety and Food Quality, we have regulating bodies, we have academics, we have the consumers, and we have the productive area. In 2018, in this publication, based on a project that we did here at this agency, with some colleagues, we distinguished what this national system is like. And we said that this is a social system. And the first link that we have, it is a social system. a very well-known German who talks about the interaction between social players, and these can be networks, can be organizations, families, countries, through the sense-based communication. To give you an example of this, it is about food safety or distinguish or risk analysis. So from that perspective, we're interested in strengthening national systems of food safety and food security. So in our countries, an a consumer, a farmer must understand the same of what food safety is, or else it is difficult to interact. The development or performance of a system are not going to be optimum, and I will show you why. So therefore, there is a central issue, the language. In the systems, social systems, and in history, also it teaches us through these universal specialists, it tells us that language was the first change that allowed us to develop the cognitive development, like is the case of Harari. Now, why does language play such an important role? Because language, as was mentioned before, in the opening remarks, it generates a fundamental aspect, which is trust. All social system requires the development of trust to function. And we have Mr. Echeverria, who's a sociologist, and some of his publications where he talks about this. But trust, how is it triggered? It is based on science, but science through feeding what is called linguistic acts, which finally generate trust in the players of our social system. And in the video we saw at the beginning, it is full of linguistic activities, which is social sciences. We have affirmations, we have judgments and promises. All of those of us that are here trust that what is being said in this video is true. And that trust is what later will allow us to generate a sense, a common meaning, which will take us to activities and coordination and finally results. And this is why communication is so important. And I would also like to give you an example of food safety. And when we share these affirmations, promises, and communication, we have action and coordination and results. We recently had a group of people that were part of a baker's group. The owner of the baker had built for their workers a very good cafeteria where workers have lunch. It is very well set up with all the guarantees of food safety and so on. However, the bakers that worked in their stores did not use it. They preferred to eat where they made bread. So why was that taking place? Because it didn't make sense for them. From the social system they come from, which can be their families, it can be their neighborhood, the community, it didn't make sense for them because they would not be sharing various elements to coordinate activities and to enter that cafeteria and obtain the results that the owner wanted to implement. So there was an activity from this perspective to provide a different result, because it seemed just the mandate was not good enough. So from that same example, what was the result that we were seeking in the social system and their players? The food safety is seen as a social activity. What we all sought out, and those of us that participate here, is that the probability of contaminating food and the impact should be the lowest possible. What does this mean? It means we have to be concerned about risk. And this is another activity that was mentioned here. When we have a risk analysis, this international discipline that is well recognized talks about risk analysis. Risk analysis, from the perspective of the role it plays, and based on science, is what feeds all these elements I mentioned previously. These judgments, affirmations, promises, and requests that can generate this trust and common sense where we can have results, which is why it is so important that this risk analysis is based on science. And we have dedicated a great deal of time to natural sciences, but it must also be based on social sciences. As we have seen in the presentations, they can be substantially important to so that the risk analysis provides us with the expected results. There are two aspects in the risk analysis when we talk about social sciences. One of them is risk communication. We've already mentioned the generation of trust through various disciplines, which is the case of psychology in risk perception, communication, demography, which is also a social science that tells us how and what specific segment of the population, whether by age and others, must have a different message. When we talk about communications, it provides us also another element that is part of risk analysis that we don't see, which is safety culture, that is the behavior of people and the conditions vis-a-vis the food safety. And that's what we're going to tackle now after providing you with an outline. So how social sciences support food safety in Chile and risk analysis. We're going to see the experience now of safety, food safety culture. And what does this mean? What does it mean for Chile? It is a group of ideas, attitudes, and behaviors, both individual and group-based, around food safety that are practiced, demonstrated routinely to learn and maintain in time within a company, an organizational group, defining the form in which things are done. There is a group by Frank Janis that talks about this group of ideas, attitude, and behavior come with a sense, a significance, and an interpretation of how it promotes or avoids risks in food safety and determines the possible behaviors to control these risks. We carry out a process. So this culture has to do with the behavior. This is our definition, but we consider, however, that these conditioning aspects are a risk factor. And why are they a risk factor? Because the circumstances affect the probability of causing a risk, as defined by FAO in various of its documents. So how do we reach this? If you want to follow the stages in this culture, there is a link right there on YouTube where we have a clear video that defines how we reach that objective. But for the objectives of this presentation, we want to begin here. The behavior is a conditioning factor. So if we have a risk analysis focus, we have to evaluate, manage, and communicate. Well, what do we evaluate? What do we assess? Determine the conditionings of behavior. We have risky behavior. What are the conditioning factors? And from social techniques for research have been implemented. So this is directly linked with social sciences. So through this, we modify these conditions to improve behavior and control risk factor. This is what the management stage gives us. And of course, communicating, which is a cross-section process. So we have generated public goods. These are models. This is a model that can be instruments, programs, and others, both for the productive sector and for consumers. And we have centered around the consumers through education. Let's talk about the productive sector, where basically what we do is carry out three activities. We evaluate risks because these are based risks on any productive group. And we ask ourselves, what are the behaviors of that group vis-a-vis the risks? And what are the conditioning factors in order to intervene? So we carry out a diagnosis of our risks, the conception of the behavior, the causes, and so on. And then we finally go and ask ourselves, what are the risky behaviors? What are the behaviors vis-a-vis those risks? And what causes them? So we carry out techniques for social research, both qualitative, focus groups, observations that are not participative, and quantitative, which is through surveys. And we start generating a profile. Through this is an intervention matrix. You have a hygiene, personal hygiene, where we identify that although in the insurance systems and protocols, people do not wash their hands. I'm sorry. You have 4 minutes left. Okay. So the hand washing does not take place. So what did we determine that caused this? There's a lack of communication within the different areas of the company. The corporate induction is not adequate. It's not practical. It's just theoretical. And this makes the behavior that is not adequate. And finally, we go to a work plan that is defined by the company in order to incide in helping the company culture improve. And then we go to the pedagogical model to promote food sciences and other social sciences. What does this do? We begin again with risks. We did research, the main research in a risk in the Chilean population at the regional level, at the different provinces, and how Chile is divided administratively. And we carry out communication based on a risk basis. We have created various tools to work with children where we can communicate what needs to be done to ensure that we behave and how we behave vis-a-vis these risks. Washing hands. There are some different tools that are used to promote this communication. Then we carry out a pedagogical method or model that with these educational tools, we link it to the school program. The objectives, the learning objectives, plus assessment for daycare, primary care, primary school, daycare, primary school, and high schools. And we need to train teachers so that through this pedagogical process, based on food safety, like social sciences or natural sciences, they are able to transmit the content of that subject through pedagogical information and transmit responsible behavior vis-a-vis the risks. This is something that is being developed in 20 schools, 1,200 students from the primary education to high school in 10 regions through the agreement with an educational department in Chile that has allowed us to carry this through with the support and financing of this institution. The conclusions is that social sciences help us to understand and where to intervene. It's not the value change, it's the social sciences through its disciplines and its tools. It provides a modern outlook on based on food system, systemic, preventive, and so on. Thank you.
Muy bien.
Okay, very well. Now we have Farid El-Jafar with us. He's an economist, master's degrees in, an MBA. He started his career in the United Nations 20 years ago. He's worked in offices on site and the headquarters of 4 different organizations, UN organizations, managing different projects and programs. He became part of the Codex Alimentarius Secretariat in 2020 as a technical officer, where, among other things, he contributed to establishing a mechanism for monitoring the use of the Codex texts. Farid has double nationalities, Syrian and Italian, and he speaks 5 languages. Dear Farid, I'll let you know when you have 5 minutes to conclude your presentation. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Muchas gracias, Leonardo.
Okay, thank you very much, Leonardo.
Buenos días a todas y
And
todos.
good morning,
Gusto estar
everyone.
con ustedes hoy.
It's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Mi presentación no va a ser tan tecnológica.
My presentation will not be as technological as the ones that my colleagues have presented before. Maybe it'll be a bit more traditional.
Que la encuentren interesante.
And hopefully you find this interesting.
Pero voy a presentar en inglés.
My apologies, but I'll present in English.
La próxima vez estaré pronto para presentar.
Next time, I'll be ready to present in Spanish, okay?
Entonces, I will switch to English now, and I'm going to share my screen. Please let me know if you can see it. Leonardo, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Is it in presentation mode?
No.
Okay. So, sorry. Now it should be.
Okay.
Thank you. So, this presentation is about the use and impact of Codex text. This is, in particular, we will focus on the case study as it was announced previously, but the idea is also to give you an overview of the whole mechanism that we have built to monitor the use and impact of Codex text. Just a few slides for those of you who do not know what the Codex Alimentarius Commission is. It's an intergovernmental body that was established by FAO and WHO. It is meeting since 1963, and its main mission is to protect the health of consumers, to ensure fair practices in food trade, and to promote coordination of all food standards work. It is composed of 189 members, which is 188 countries plus the European Union, 242 observers, and it is 100% member-driven. The Codex Secretariat is hosted in FAO HQ, And what the Codex Alimentarius is the food code. It means that we produce food standards, food guidelines, and codes of practice. Just an overview of what the Codex has produced in the last 60 years. So over 237 standards, over 7,000 maximum residue limits for pesticides and veterinary drugs, 5,000 maximum levels in food additives, and so on and so forth. So this was to give you an overview of what the Codex is. So what we're going to talk about today is how we monitor the use and impact of those standards, codes of practice, and guidelines that Codex produces. So what happened? Basically, there was a request from our members. They wanted to understand the impact of Codex work. So we consulted with the evaluation officers of FAO and WHO and reviewed what could be the possible methodology that could satisfy the need expressed by members. We came up with a mechanism that foresees three components. The first one is the administration of an annual survey to our members, and I will show you just a few key results regarding this survey. The carrying out case studies, and the first case study that we carried out was in Brazil, and I will go more in depth in the result of this case study. And then the third component is the collaboration with the World Trade Organization. And this is just starting, so this is about a little bit the future of what we're doing. So regarding the annual member survey, I just wanted to show you a few slides. In this slide, you will see the level of satisfaction with Codex text by Codex members. You can see that the level of satisfaction is very high. In yellow, you can see the Latin America and Caribbean region. So that has a very, very high level of satisfaction with Codex text. This slide shows how much Codex texts are used as a baseline for food legislation and policies at country level. And you can see again that when it comes to Latin American, Caribbean, this is either completely, mostly, or partially used as a baseline to inform food legislation and policies. This is to give you an idea of the impact of Codex text in your region. And a couple of slides on trade. So how much adherence to Codex text has enhanced your country's ability to access international markets? You will see that again, for generally for all countries, but for Latin American and Caribbean countries, this has been quite a positive impact. Similarly, how much Codex texts have been used to promote regional harmonization in food regulations and facilitating smoother intra-regional trade. Again, Latin America and the Caribbean is scoring very high. Last slide about the Codex survey results is that we have asked Codex members what they thought were the highest barriers to the adoption and use of Codex texts. And here you will see the Latin America and Caribbean results. And member states of the region reported the lack of local implementation capacity as the first barrier. Then they reported the duration of national implementation process and the lack of awareness of Codex provisions by national stakeholders. What is interesting, I think, is if you look down, and here you have the language issues, that is the second last, and they do not score as high as other barriers. And I thought that was interesting to mention, because sometimes we hear that languages are high barriers to the uptake of Codex text. In this case, it seems that there are more important priorities than language. So about our case study, this is what I'm going to go in depth today. So what we did is, while the survey is gathering quantitative data about members' use and impact of Codex text, what we did through the case study is that we took one Codex text in one country and went in depth trying to understand what difference it made for the country. So we chose a particular Codex text, which is the Code of Practice for the Prevention and Reduction of Mycotoxin Contamination in Cereals. This is a risk management tool to prevent and reduce mycotoxin contamination in cereals. It ensures food safety, trade facilitation, and global regulatory alignment. Why Brazil? Because Brazil used this Codex Code of Practice to solve a problem they had with fumonisin contamination in maize. So why does mycotoxin contamination matters? I'm sure most of you are technical experts, so you teach me and I don't teach you. But just as a reminder, because mycotoxin pose a health risk for the human health, so they can be carcinogenic, neurotoxic, immunosuppressive. They have an economic impact because contaminated crops lead to trade rejection, food loss, and economic instability for farmers. And then there's also a climate factor that influences the occurrence of mycotoxins in cereals. So coming to Brazil, Brazil had a very, very successful story to tell regarding mycotoxin and in particular fumonisin contamination in maize. And we wanted to understand what were the success factors of Brazil and what could be a lesson learned for other countries that could basically follow Brazil example. So to give you an idea, if you see this graph, Brazil in the 90s and early 2000 was a net importer of maize. In 2022, it had become the third largest. Can you close the mic that is open? Thank you. In 2022, it had become the third largest global producer and second exporter worldwide. So what determined that change? So we went to Brazil and we interviewed a series of regulatory authorities, Anvisa, which is the health regulatory authority, MAPA, which is the Ministry of Agriculture, and Metro, which is the quality control, basically, authority. Yeah, what are the main findings? So what happened is that Brazil in the early 2000s started participating actively in Codex work, and in particular in Codex Committee on Contaminants in Food. That participation was fundamental to understand the risk assessment process. So how FAO and WHO together were gathering data from countries to establish then the risk assessment, the maximum levels in contaminants. And they decided to take the lead within this Codex Committee and lead the review of the Code of Practice on mycotoxin contamination. Not only understanding what was happening, they decided in 2011, Anvisa established maximum levels for fumonisins in maize, But they did this very smartly. So they established the law, but the implementation for raw grain unprocessed would start only in 2014. This phased approach gave Brazil the opportunity to start engaging with all the stakeholders to start adopting those good agricultural practices and good manufacturing practices that would lower fumonisin contamination in maize. So they adopted a progressive reduction strategy. And they did a lot of public consultation and industry engagement, because what was happening is that at the beginning, industry was submitting false data. And they had to discuss a lot with them to start telling them that there was no bad data, that all data was good. The important is that the data was trustworthy. And this is how they started convincing industry in submitting data, and they could finally start submitting data to the risk assessment process. So they started influencing the MLs that were being set at Codex level. They also had a lot of training programs for farmers and processors, and they used their national research and training center, which is called Embrapa, to do training basically on the use of these good agricultural practices and good manufacturing practices that were embedded in the code of practice. So this is the results of several studies that were elaborated by the University of Campinas in Brazil, and in particular, Professor Liliana Roja, which I'm very grateful. You can see that the columns in blue are before the start, the enaction of the legislation. And from 2011, this was the start of the legislation. And you can see the fumonisin level in maize dropping dramatically.
5 minutes.
Thank you. I will for sure use 5 minutes more, Leonardo, sorry. So what we did here is we cross-referenced these results, which were the University of Campinas results. We cross-referenced them with the export value of Brazilian maize. And what you can see is that while fumonisin levels were dropping in maize, the export level was increasing. And this is how Brazil became the second exporter worldwide of maize. So what were the lessons learned and the key success factors? First of all, Brazil had a very good codex structure at country level that was mimicking the codex structure here at headquarters. They did a lot of consultation with all the stakeholders at national level. They had this progressive approach, decreasing over the years the maximum levels allowed at national level. So to accompany farmers and industry in complying with the regulation. They used the code of practice, and in particular the good agricultural practices and the good manufacturing practices in adapting them to the local needs. They did a lot of research and innovation as well, trying to find resistant maize varieties. And they had this very good collaboration with the private sector. So just a few words on our next steps. As I said, the building of this mechanism is about 3 components, and the third one is the collaboration with WTO. And here I added the 3 sisters, which are the International Plant Protection Convention and the World Organization of Animal Health. With Codex, we call each other the 3 sisters because these are the regulation or the standard setting organizations that are recognized by the WTO Sanitary and Phytosanitary Committee. So what we did, and you can find it on the Codex website, there's a publication on the efforts that the Three Sisters are doing in monitoring and evaluation. And we found very similar issues. I won't, because I'm finishing the time, so I won't go into the details of this, but encourage you to go to this publication. And we have just started the work with the WTO. So to conclude, Brazil's experience serves as a model for the code of practice implementation and maximum level progression. Codex engagement is key for regulatory convergence and global trade facilitation. And we are continuing our collaboration between Codex, the WTO, the World Organization for Animal Health, and the IPPC to enhance food safety and fair trade practices. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Farid. I have a question to you from the audience.
Please.
Could you elaborate on how
Tengo una pregunta.
with government institutions and business in Brazil to facilitate access to data and thus generate evidence to support decision making?
Thank you very much, Leonardo. This is an excellent question. Brazil had a champion, Ligia Schneider from Anvisa. And she was the one who spearheaded all this. And she spent countless hours speaking to all the stakeholders, going to national fairs, national agricultural fairs, and explaining what was happening. Truly, like, it was a collective effort, but she was really the champion of this. And she generated that trust. She spoke to all the stakeholders, and it took not one day, but years, and several iterations and several participation to every possible opportunity, not only at the time. Before publishing a law, Brazil had to do formally some public consultations where people were allowed to comment on the law. And therefore, this was also part of the buy-in of the stakeholders into complying with the new regulation, and therefore starting submitting good data. Over.
Thank you very much, Farid, for your very interesting position.
Miguel, creo que
Sí,
tienes que tomar
sí,
la
para
palabra tú.
continuar con las preguntas. Nelson, tenemos una pregunta. Sí, los recursos en la realidad virtual son en
We
algunas
have a question. The resources, how does the industry provide this type of technology? Yes, this was a question for Nelson Andrade. So part of the situation that the organization manages and to access this technology, OIRSA and the industry has to request the use of this technology through the Ministries of Agriculture. And this organization can facilitate the technology, which is the path that needs to be followed in order to ensure that you can opt for these components. The engineer would like you to go a little deeper into this topic, how the industry can access this kind of technology. Thank you, Raul. We consider that what we're missing to ensure that the industry and different sectors are really interested in complying with this technology and using is a willingness. In OIRSA, what we have, we don't have economic resources, but with a great deal of willingness to do our aspect. And the slogan of this meeting is that we need to ensure that science is in action and in practice. So that motivated all of us, Raúl, Lisette, Nelson, to go into artificial intelligence applied to agriculture and particularly to food safety. We are convinced, absolutely convinced, that we cannot be delayed and go behind technology. We have to go hand in hand with technology. So with a moment there used to be a gap, we have to close that gap and take that leap. The industry must therefore have a willingness to carry out this development and use of technology. Sometimes it's not a resource issue. It is the willingness and the of doing this. There is a question from Mr. Manuel Miranda. You talked about the work for the development of food safety with children and educators. Have there been long-term impacts in that which relates to these interventions? I'm sorry, I have a problem with my camera, but you do hear me, correct? Can you hear me? Yes, we do. Yes, please. The impact, when referring to schools, we are just beginning with this process with schools, notwithstanding that the measurement of the impact, it is considered within the same intervention structure. And why is it considered within the same intervention? Because, as I said previously, the method that we're implementing is a method linked to the learning processes of the school curricula, and also it is linked to assessment model. This model is not going side by side to what teachers do in the classroom with the children. It is rather going to be a part of what the teachers do with their students. That's why I talked about natural sciences subject in school. In natural sciences, one day they're going to be talking about food, for example. It is in the content of that curricula. So what we're going to do is to ensure that that topic is going to be transmitted to students through the pedagogical tools, these games or shows that I mentioned to you, these this micro world, the different types of activities. This will going to be transmitted through this game, and this is going to be part of the objectives, therefore, in the learning process of that subject, and also in the manner in which the evaluation indicators are used for that subject matter. And this is how we're going to measure it.
Bueno, tenemos más preguntas.
Well, we have more questions. Notwithstanding that, given our time constraint, we are going to ensure that we respond this to you. We're going to have Dr. Morales, who is going to lead the next process. Thank you, Raúl. To provide continuity to the last part of this webinar, we would like to invite you to be a part of this roundtable where we will reflect on the scientific evidence in the role of science in food safety. I have the honor to introduce the distinguished panelists. We have Freddy Fernandez, who is the Chief of Staff of the Ministry of Agriculture of the Dominican Republic. We also have Mayra Lisette, who is the Director of Reference and Food of Senacica of Mexico. And then we have Mayra Lisette Mota Padilla, who is the Vice Minister of the Vice Ministry of Agricultural Health and Regulations in Visarmaga in Guatemala. Camilo Montes, who's the president of the Latin American Alliance of Food and Beverage Industry Associations. I would like to thank all of you for being here with us today, and we're going to begin with 2 questions, which we will set forth. You'll have approximately 2 minutes to respond. And I would like to thank you to stay in the time allotted. So question 1 is, from your experience, what is the importance of having data and scientific evidence to guide food safety decisions?
Adelante.
¿Cuál es el orden?
What order are we going to follow? As you wish, you can begin, Michelle.
Disculpen, puedo interrumpir, soy Camilo Montes. Es que estoy a
Can
punto
I
de abordar un
interrupt? I am Camilo Montes. I'm about to board a flight, but I would like to respond to this question. Yes, please, Camilo.
Mire, primero, muchas gracias por la invitación. Soy
First
Camilo
of all,
Montes,
thank you for the invitation. I am in Colombia, and I lead the Latin American food and beverage industry, which represents industry from every country, from Mexico to Argentina. We are committed to food safety. The question is at the core. You cannot conceive today. You can hear me, yeah? Yes. It is not conceivable today to manage food safety in all the industry of all sizes in Latin America if we cannot have an adequate management of the data of science, if it's not adjusted to the best protocols, which not only in Codex Alimentarius, which are very rigorous, but also it lands on each country based on the technical regulations of each nation. And that's why I find very inspiring the 2 presentations that we saw in a very pragmatic manner, how companies, governments, academy are all committed to food safety, and that it becomes part of the standard of food and beverages for Latin America. Because we cannot forget that it is thanks to that scientific management, the use of data, the adoption of better practices, that as humanity, we've been able to take on the struggles that food safety has presented. So in this hyper-connected world, as we have seen, in artificial intelligence helps us in the processes, but the consumers are also receiving data and information where, in fact, it challenges they challenge the need to have more information and how companies are operating. And this is why it is very important today to commemorate this important day of food safety, which allows us, I insist, to better implement practices and be in a hyper-connected society we have today as a consumer, but also as a worker of a food industry. We are constantly, in fact, asking ourselves if the manner, the practices, the manner in which we act could be done in a different manner. The evidence and the decision-making process based on data has to be more relevant. It cannot be done by individual companies. And also because 98% of the companies installed in the region are small and medium-sized. And that's why we need to work with the academy, with the university research, with the consumer, and with the industry. Thank you very much.
Apagado tu micrófono, Margarita.
Turn off. Okay. Margarita, thank you very much. Camila, we'd like to hear from the government standpoint. I wonder if Mayra Lizeth could give us her standpoint on this topic. Thank you very much for the invitation. To be honest, I think this is fundamental for various reasons, because it is key to protect public health the food system and implement effective rules that will affect both the consumer and the producers. It is very important on the decision-making process because it provides us solid baselines and it formulates effective public policies and to have information-based decisions. The consumer will have to be confident that the information that they will consume will avoid intoxications and other public issues related to food. Now, in the compliance of the regulations, the scientific evidence provides us the updates of regulations and international standards, local and regional. Ensure that the controls are effective and appropriate. It is also important for resource implementation because we're going to carry out activities. We will cover all the risk areas and will avoid us having unnecessary efforts in different areas. It will also facilitate the development of new technologies, control processes, better practices, and innovation based on solid data. Transparency and scientific support is fundamental because it creates trust in the consumer, both in regulatory institutions and others, which allows us to ensure that the market will accept the products. Thank you very much, Mayra, from the Ministry of Agriculture in Guatemala. Marlene Cristina, could you provide us with your feedback? Thank you very much, Margarita. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. Thank you for the invitation. I believe I would like to quote Mr. Dr. Obidia. One of the things that he mentioned is laboratories are the cornerstone of food safety in the concept of science in action. As this 2025, I am the director of the National Institute of Food Safety in Mexico. And it is in this center where we generate a great deal of data and a scientific evidence that will help us and that will help the decision makers in the regulatory areas. So I can say that, in fact, to have scientific evidence is very important in this case as an authority, because it will allow us to sustain risk assessments in decision making at an objective standpoint. So we will be able to have preventive measures and risk control. And also, we are dedicated to carrying out the analysis from the production point, vegetables, animals that will be linked, and fishing also that will be linked to human consumption. So through our labs, with highly qualified personnel, with processes that are systematic in nature, and also with the adequate technological platform, we are generating all this information that will allow us from the management and managing risk there without scientific evidence generated through the application of the adequate technology. It is not possible to make a decision that are correct. Thank you, Mayra, for underlining the fundamental role of laboratories to obtain scientific evidence. Freddy, what can you add after so much input in this conversation?
Bien, buenos
Michelle.
días, buenas
Well,
tardes a todos
thank you. Good
los
afternoon
panelistas.
and good morning to all the
Decía un
panelists.
colega que el ser
A
humano es
colleague
lo que
was saying
come.
that human being is
Y
what
en
he
esa
eats.
visión holística
He or
de
she
lo que es
eats.
un ser
Within
humano,
this
corresponde al
holistic
Estado
standpoint, it
servir
is
a
a
veces
role
de
of the
intermediario entre el sector
government to be
privado,
the
la comunidad
intermediate between the
científica
private industry and the
y el
scientific community.
consumidor,
The
cada uno
consumer,
con intereses
each one with
diferentes.
different
Entonces,
interests.
cuando no
Therefore,
se tienen datos
when we do
científicos,
not
no
have
se genera
scientific
confianza.
data,
Y
we
yo,
do not
aparte de
generate
todo lo que se
trust.
ha dicho,
And
me
in addition
gustaría
to
decir
everything
que
that has been
cuando se
said, I
habla
would
con
like to say
evidencia,
that
se
when we
habla
talk
con
with
ciencia y esa
evidence,
ciencia
we
se
talk
convierte
with
en tecnología
awareness,
aplicable y
and this
útil.
becomes
Entonces se
technology that
genera
is
una
applicable and
confianza
useful, and
para
it
que
generates
se pueda
trust.
entender mejor que al
In order
final la
to better
inocuidad es un buen
understand
negocio,
that
tanto
food
para el que
safety is a good
produce
business, both for
como
the
para el que
producer
consume,
as it is
como para el
for the
Estado y los
consumer,
gobiernos, que son
as
los
for the
garantes de
state and
que
the
haya una
government,
sinergia entre
to
ambas
ensure that there is a
intereses
synergy in both
distintos.
areas,
Entonces,
although there
sin
are different
evidencia
interests.
científica, eso
Without
prácticamente
scientific
se hace imposible.
evidence,
Y en los
this
tiempos
becomes
modernos,
impossible. And
donde
in
el
modern
método
times,
científico es
where the
uno,
scientific
donde
method
las
is
evidencias
on one
deben ser
side, where the
objetivas,
evidence
replicables y
must
que se
be
puedan entender
objective,
ampliamente, yo
that
creo
can
que la
be
única forma de
replicated,
generar
and so on.
confianza en
The
el sector
other
privado
manner
y
in
hacer
creating
entender la
trust in the
importancia
private
de la
industry
inocuidad para
and
la seguridad
explaining the
alimentaria
importance of
es
food
yendo
safety
con evidencia y
and
no con
food
fanatismo,
security
con
has to do
objetividad,
with
para
evidence,
que se
not with
pueda crear una
fanatism,
comunidad
so that you
armónica y
can
todos
create
entendamos
a harmonized
que
community, and that we all
si no hacemos
understand
las buenas
that
prácticas,
without
si no hacemos
the
las
implementation
cosas
of
como
good
hay que hacerlas, o
practices,
al final, si
uh,
no hay
at
consumidores,
the
no hay
end,
empresa, y
if
si
there
no
are
hay
no
empresa, el
consumers, there
Estado
are
no
no
tiene
companies.
puesto a largo
And
plazo
the
para
government
poder
does not
garantizar un
have
desarrollo
the tools on the long
sostenible.
term
Entonces yo
to have a
creo que
sustainable
a
development.
veces invertir en
Therefore, I
ciencia se ve
believe
como
that
una pérdida
sometimes
de
to invest in
tiempo
science seems
porque
like a
los
waste of
resultados no
time
son en el
because the
momento, pero
results
cuando se
are
obtienen
not in
los
the moment.
resultados
But
casi
once
siempre
the
son
results
aceptados por
arrive,
toda la
they are
comunidad porque están
generally
sustentados
accepted by
en
the
datos
community
científicos. Y
because they are
finalmente,
sustained on
solo podemos
scientific
defender los
evidence.
intereses de
And we
naciones
can only
pequeñas como
defend
las
the
nuestras, los
interest of
organismos
small countries such
internacionales,
as this
si no han
one
reparado por
at
una
the
sólida
international
evidencia
level. If we
científica,
have
porque no
good,
tenemos los
solid
recursos para buscando
scientific background,
lobistas,
we do
buscando
not
evidencia que
have
tienen otras
the
naciones,
the
pero
funds
con
to
una
look for
un
evidence
buen
as other
fundamento
nations.
científico,
But
a
if we
veces la
have a
verdad
good
es más
scientific
fácil de
baseline, it
imponer.
is
Yo creo que
easier
por
to
ahí
impose
y
some of
acorde
these
con lo
rules.
que
And
han
I
dicho los
believe
colegas,
that in
la
accordance to what
importancia
our
de la
colleagues have said, the
inocuidad
importance
con
of
la
food
ciencia se hace más
safety
fácil hacerlo entender.
backed by science, it makes it easier to understand. Thank you very much, Freddie. I think we lost Camilo, but as was being mentioned by Freddie, oh, it's here, here. Okay. This next question, therefore, Camilo.
Qué pena con usted, no me imagino la locura que está aquí en
I'm
el aeropuerto.
sorry,
Sí, adelante
I'm
con
here in
la
the
segunda
airport.
pregunta,
I'm
Camila.
sorry, but I'm listening. Please provide me with the second question. Maybe I believe that how does your institution in the four panelists share your share or access the generation of evidence, and how is it translated into concrete actions or recent decisions? I'm sorry for the other colleagues in the industry of food and beverages industry. It has profound scientific evidence, and it builds its practices based on them, and it's also based on alliances in the region, for example, with laboratories you were talking about, with research centers, with universities. But in fact, with scientists that work in the industry, that are experts in food, that have internal monitoring, they participate in international networks as Codex Alimentarius. We at the ALAIP, we are active participants in the Codex Alimentarius through technical groups that we obtain information from the most important publication. It's important to promote scientific evidence-based information, and the colleagues that are being called upon by the colleagues today is fundamental. We have perceived that in Latin America, some public policies in food have been implemented that are not necessarily supported in the best scientific evidence. And this is when we call upon the regulators. It is very important that governments invest in the training of their workers so that they become updated and have access to the scientific and technological developments so that when decisions are made based on technical regulations to defend public policies, it must be done through scientific support, because the scientific method invites us to carry out the evidence that provide traceability, and in practical terms, the industry also provides manufacturing information, our standardized processes, and we also see with more frequency the international certification, the IFCC 22000, which is no longer privileged for the large-scale companies. It is very good how micro and small industries are also participating in these practices. So it is all thanks to the evidence. All companies of different sizes in the regions are implemented the best protocols and robust best practices, being capable today to respond in real time to direct calls by the industries when there is a sanitary risk. But the work has to be collective. So that's why we underline the significance that FAO invites us to participate in this program. Thank you, Camilo. Now, from the perspective of Mexico, could you give us an example of how this evidence has become a concrete action? Yes, of course, Margarita. For example, focusing on the laboratories, in the case of this center, is in the norm 17,225, based on the results of the analysts. We're also certified in the norm 9001, which is quality assurance, which allows us to systematize all the processes and that they satisfy the requirements. So this has allowed us to resolve commercial controversies. Mexico, its main vegetable fresh produce goes to the United States. And we have seen certain occurrences because of the consumption of fresh food from Mexico contaminated with salmonella. And based on the scientific information, we have been able to generate an extensive information research to take different data and define how the genome and complete information to identify the gender, the serotype of salmonella, and to be able to identify if these microorganisms of production correspond to the same group that, because an important aspect is to share the information. In this case, the United States through FDA refers to us on the outbreaks generated, and with the sequence and information we can compare and determine if that bacteria was from Mexico or not. So we have had both sides of the coin, where we have identified that the bacteria does come from Mexico, and in that case, we are ensured that we can be involved in the production line, in the analysis of risk reductions. The producers have become extremely aware of their commitment to the development of these risk reduction processes at the production level. And we have been able to have a better communication both with the producers associations and other government-based organizations in Mexico. And in fact, this has strengthened our systems for food safety in the nation. And we also have a very close link to the Ministry of Health in Mexico. That's the experience that I can share from Mexico, utilizing this scientific evidence to deal and strengthen the regulation and surveillance of food safety.
Thank you, Marlene. I'm Freddie from the Dominican Republic. What are the examples that you've had? Well, the concept of food safety in our country it's been hard to implement this because there was food management where these concepts many times were not understood. Once we've gathered scientific evidence, collected it, and we have data which is undebatable, with evidence-based data based on science, we have different public policies for monitoring, diagnosis, audits from the farmers, the slaughterhouses, the packaging factories, controls to exporters and to local traders, which sometimes understand that food safety, and I must say this, is only related with international markets. Local populations must not leave the food here for it to be of second or third hand, right? The local population also it's also allowed to produce good quality food, to serve, to eat good quality food, right? So you see that there's a lot of red tape, but if the state doesn't have a scientific evidence, and we must recognize that sometimes we want to apply policies that don't have any scientific or solid basis, but we have a long struggle. We have the National Food Safety Department. We've trained internationally. We stay active. At a general level, the state has understood the importance for having a food safety department and the logics of the investments and how good it could be for the public and private sector. Now, I think that the main profits after the scientific evidence that we've had for constant development has to do with an awareness raising process for the private sector and the state to understand that this is not a trend or a transitory public policy, but this is a government, a state, and permanent policy. We recognize that it's a long road ahead for our country and that we'll have many battles and obstacles. But if there's no food safety, it's impossible for us to compete internationally, thus guaranteeing food insecurity. If there's no food security, along with the health measures, we will always be unsafe and insecure, sorry. And in addition to the politics, the problems we have in politics, and it's very important to consider food safety, right? And addition to all the other problems we've got in your country. Yes, okay, great. Dominican Republic is basing their policies in science, and let's go even beyond. What can you report to us from Guatemala regarding how you are advancing with science and action? Thank you very much, Margarita. In the Ministry, with the Department for Food Safety, we've held different actions, monitoring, collaboration with institutions, different risk analysis and research in order to guarantee food safety. Now, in monitoring and surveillance, we tried to have our periodic elements in our different food chains from local production until trading. The idea is to detect pollutants, pesticide residues, different pathogens and risks, and with different analysis in accredited laboratories, both nationally or in Guatemala and international and official laboratories. We're talking about how to access all that technology, but sometimes we can't just do it ourselves, right? Our laboratory can't have all the equipment in, but we can have agreements and use laboratories that already have an accredited test. Therefore, I believe that that is a way of facilitating this. Now, we must also promote good practices, and that is by developing training programs both for tutors, exporters, and other stakeholders from the food sector. It is to promote good agricultural and practices, livestock practices, and industries that ensure and guarantee food safety. I've mentioned before collaboration with institutions, and that is means to work in partnership both with universities, which was already mentioned, research centers, entities like UPS, the FAO, etc., and to strengthen the scientific basis of regulations and protocols. And risk analysis uses scientific studies that are available both nationally and internationally for conducting these analyses, and they will guide the updating of the regulations, just like the maximum waste limits or residue limits and control procedures. We've also established different residue control programs, both of pesticides and medication. We've tried to update different regulations and protocols. Someone mentioned something about traceability, which I believe it's very important because we have inspected the traceability system in many production chains, and this in order to ensure food safety. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mayra. The truth is that we've had great speakers today, and I'd like to thank you very much for your time. We've had perspectives from the private sector, from the public sector, and you mentioned this already, right? How important science is for public policies and trade. And just like to thank Mayra, Mayren, Freddy, Camilo. Thank you very much for your time. And now I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Leopoldo del Barrio, who is an officer for food quality and food safety at the regional office of FAO for Latin America and the Caribbean, who will conclude this event for us. Thank you very much, Margarita. I'll try to be quite brief, because of time. I'd like to profoundly thank more than 500 attendants that have connected and have been accompanying us today, the different lecturers, the panel members, and the different complementary organizations which have accompanied us in this space of discussion, dialogue, exchange of know-how, experience, which have helped us highlight the role of these biomedical sciences, natural and social sciences, right? Where we've got the behavioral sciences and also here technological innovation for the decision making, like we mentioned before, for regulatory basis, for policies that are all science-based. I'd like to remind you that this event will be published. The log of this event will be published, or the minutes will be published in www.fao.org/Americas during the afternoon for you to check it and for you to share it between your peers. That's it for us today. Thank you very much and good afternoon.